Coming up on today's show, a tough Tuesday for the Braves, but maybe better days ahead. We'll talk about it coming up next.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Baseball Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves baseball talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste, and alongside me are Grant McCauley and Maria Martin. Today's episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. And of course, our Atlanta Baseball Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So for the second time this season, the Braves were shut out. So let's start with maybe the easier part to explain of how a 4-0 loss to the Orioles happened Tuesday. Grant, what did you see that maybe led to what we would consider an uncharacteristic outing from Max Fried?
Well, I think that Max really made one mistake. And unfortunately for the Braves, the margin of error for their pitchers has been razor thin for going on about 6 weeks now. You just can't make a mistake. And that's a statement that on its face, as somebody who's been around baseball for a long time, I kind of reject that because you can't expect perfection out of your pitchers every single night, but it's felt that way. It's felt like, all right, we've got to keep the game manageable, which they have done a marvelous job of. And Max Fried has been one of the best pitchers in baseball. But the margin for error right now is if you give up a couple of 3 runs, you just kind of feel like you're already behind the 8 ball. And then you start to look at the Braves' struggles with runners in scoring position, which I know we'll talk a lot more about later. But in particular, Sean Murphy hits a ball that's out of 29 other parks, but not Camden Yards. Those 3 runs don't go on the board. It was kind of a microcosm of what the Braves have faced really since the end of April. They get enough pitching to where it should be a competitive game, but the offense just can't get it going. And again, the pitchers just don't have a lot to work with.
Yeah. And I saw something, Maria, that said if this was 2022 Camden Yards, that ball would have been out of there. And it's like Grant said, it's so, you hate to say it, but it's so Braves 2024. It just couldn't get any more. It was like last night was just a microcosm of the season so far.
Yeah, I mean, Max Fried was keeping the top third of the O's lineup 0 for 8. So it was just a couple of different things that Grant was mentioning. And Jorge Mateo coming off the IL and hitting that bomb.
Right.
That's just not something that you would have drawn up, especially not from Max. And it's not even really an uncharacteristic outing for Max. I think it was just a matter of the O's having timely hitting for sure. Yeah. And he was getting a lot of weak contact yesterday. And Max has been one of those pieces to the Braves rotation that's kept them in this thing, as Grant had mentioned as well. It's the pitching that's keeping them afloat right now because we all know the offense has struggled. We saw more signs of that last night when they couldn't capitalize on things that they were doing well. So I don't really necessarily believe that it was an uncharacteristic outing for Max Fried. And I think that if they continue to put their offense in position, eventually you got to hope that something's going to come together at the plate for the Braves.
Yeah, you do. And Grant, you hope that there's not another tough outing at the beginning. I think sometimes too, that kind of takes the wind out of the sails, whether it's Braves country or whether it's the players themselves. When you see Michael Harris II come up and he gets a triple and you're thinking, okay, we know what this normally looks like for the Braves when a leadoff batter gets a triple. Then all of a sudden 2, 3, 4 down in the inning. And we know what the rest of it was. And, you could say, did the top of the order, kind of, was that indicative of the rest of the night? And I really feel like, well, no, it's kind of the entirety of the order that kind of struggled again last night. And it's kind of been indicative, to your point earlier, Grant, of kind of what we've seen for at least the better part of 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody but Marcell Ozuna seems to be going through it. I mean, he had 2 more hits and a walk last night. And the leadoff triple, I mean, you talk about things that are just indicative of how the Braves have played or symbolic of how the Braves have played the last 6 or so weeks. I mean, when you get a leadoff triple in an inning, forget just the Braves. I mean, in baseball, you typically scored that run way more times than not. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but leadoff triple is about as good as solo homer. It's about as close as you can get. And it just didn't happen for the Braves last night. But they had other opportunities throughout the evening. The Sean Murphy one obviously took the wind out of the sails, if you want to use that phrase again. And then you had, just more chances and more chances and more chances. and the timely hits just aren't there. So you saw Brian Snitker adjust the lineup a little bit. He said he wanted to put some guys back in familiar spots. I don't know if that's necessarily the fix. I don't think they've reached the portion of the season, and I joked about this on the postcast. Do you just start drawing names out of hats? Does everybody use the same bat? I mean, something that gives you either some superstition or completely random effect that might kickstart this lineup. But the bottom line is these are talented professional hitters that it's, to use the word I've used for over a month, it is baffling to see all of them, by and large, struggling at the same time with the same things for this long.
Yeah, I think Brian Snitker kind of said it best, and we'll talk about it a little bit later as well, but I don't know what to say.
Right.
I mean, I think it's one of those where none of us, Maria, really knows, and we're just kind of the outsiders looking in. But if the manager is baffled about what's going on and how to kind of correct it, and he's tinkering, and we'll talk a little bit about the tinkering with the lineup and everything, it's like at the end of the day, you kind of don't, all you can do is just wait. It's just a patience game, and it's just timing, and you just hope. And I'm kind of going to go into just like a slight petty moment, but you kind of hope, okay, listen, the Phillies haven't swooned yet, right? So if the Phillies haven't swooned yet, then there's an opportunity, just because of the law of averages, that the Braves haven't kind of hit their stride yet. So in my little mind, I thought to myself, when I saw how the series against the Mets ended in the UK over the weekend, I was like, okay, maybe there's some hope there, because, you know, you're still at a point in place in the season where the Braves can chase down the Phillies and anyone else. But I guess in my mind, I thought to myself, like, gosh, that can happen. But when we saw what we saw at the top of last night's game, I think it was just kind of that, wow, it may happen, but we may have to wait just a little while longer to see it come to fruition.
It's June, which means there's always hope in baseball at this time of the year. And it also is the perfect time of the year for them to try anything that they need to do to get these guys to start hitting the baseball. And there's no magic fix. There's no quick fix. There's nothing that, you know, you can start telling these guys for them to turn it around. It's all a matter of what they can do. It is frustrating, especially when you're facing Albert Suarez and he has a off night for Albert Suarez, and you're not seeing them capitalize on that. That to me is very indicative of how the offense has been operating for the Braves. And it is frustrating because these guys are really good. And it's, I think, more frustrating because of what happened last year. They had a historic last season at the plate. And now this year, we're seeing struggles we haven't seen in a couple of years from the Braves offense. And even some of these hitters who showed a lot of promise earlier, just not doing what they need to be doing. Matt Olson calling out some of the rest of his teammates, not in a negative way, but just, I think, trying to get people to start to come along a little bit quicker. It's not working. None of this stuff is working right now. But the good news is it is June. So I believe that there's still hope for them to get together, but there isn't much to say anymore. It feels redundant. They're not hitting the baseball. They're not capitalizing on where they should be on the base paths. And I don't know what else to say at this point.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of there at a bit of a loss for words. And all you can say is, I think you made a great point about the fact that you have 2023 looming, right? In terms of the historic hitting that they did last season. Then you have 2021 looming, where you're like, ooh, maybe we'll get to the trade deadline, we'll that magic again, and it'll run to World Series. But I'm going to hope, Grant, that is the optimism that we keep going back to and hoping for it, as opposed to saying, well, you know, kind of getting down, and it is only a June 12th for crying out loud. And then, I don't know, I kind of also will look to optimism in Ian Anderson, or wherever we can get it, quite frankly. And just kind of ending on that positive note, Brian Snitker, of course, said that he threw a live BP session Monday. He's expected to throw another in the next couple days. And this is kind of the trajectory or the timeline that the Braves had always kind of put out there for us. So I don't know, maybe to me, that could be a light at the end of the tunnel as well, that maybe Braves country and even those of us who follow and report on them can actually look to.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly go a long way towards helping them win that fifth spot of the rotation if they can get somebody back who's done the kind of things Ian Anderson has. Now, coming off of surgery, that is a bit of a feeling out process, and clearly the rehab assignment is ahead of him. But, you know, you'll take all the help you can get. I know the question I'll get a lot on social media will be, well, can he hit? And the answer to that, of course, is no. But they do need to solve that fifth spot in the rotation. And Ian Anderson has been waiting in the wings now for going on about 16 months since his Tommy John surgery, or 14 months. And by the time he gets back, it'll have been quite a while for him. And keep in mind what he was for the Braves when he was healthy in 2020 and 2021. He's one of the best postseason pitchers that the team has had. I know we don't want to sit here and talk about the postseason probably at this point, but there's a lot of baseball left to be played. The Braves still own the wild card right now, and they've got time to figure some things out. But having Ian Anderson back in the second half, in addition to whatever reinforcements might walk through that door, could help the Braves as they look to find their stride and hit their stride at the right time of the year, which, going down the stretch and into October is not a bad time to be playing your best baseball. So maybe just get all this stuff out of the way here now.
Yeah, I would say the same. Maybe this is one of those situations where, hey, it's June and it's June 12th, and we also still have a couple months. Not that Alex Anthopoulos Maria won't make a move before then, but he's got time to work his magic too, if indeed there is a situation where he decides to go for it on the trade market. But yeah, I think just hearing any little positivity or anything that's consistent with what the Braves thought they were going to get from Ian Anderson and where he was going to be by this point, I think should be cause for optimism as well.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Spencer Strider happened, and now they don't have them for the rest of the year. And there has been a multiple guy audition for that fifth starter spot, and a lot of them have shown a lot of signs of hope. And then you bring someone in like Hurston Waldrop, who I think is just not ready yet and deserves some more time at a lower level. And so Ian Anderson, a guy who's been there, hearing that he could be coming back eventually, that is very positive news. And Grant mentioned it. I mean, the postseason is what Braves fans really care about at the end of the day. And so when you hear a guy like Ian Anderson, that's the first thing I think of. He was a hero in the postseason for multiple years for the Braves. And I know he's struggled through this rehab. It's been a very difficult process for Ian. It's hard sitting on the sidelines and watching your team compete without you. And he was very honest about that back in spring training in February. And I'm sure it has continued to be difficult given the fact that it's been a very long time since he's seen the diamond at a major league level. So I think getting him back will be crucial, especially at that point in the year. I think once you turn the corner this summer and you can get him back in a couple of months, maybe to where he was, perfect timing, in my opinion. You need guys like that in the back half of the year if you want to turn things around like you're talking about they did in 2021.
Indeed. Well, a remix that may need another remix. We'll talk about it in Going Deep. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Here on our Atlanta Baseball Party, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for the Braves, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will still stop coming and even seizing your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked-on. That is tnusa.com/locked-on. And you got to do this because at the end of the day, you might be someone who needs to resolve your tax issues with the IRS, and it's never too late to do just that. So don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get the help that you need from a team of licensed tax professionals by calling 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked-on. Our Atlanta Baseball Party is also brought to you by PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun, exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less or two or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Now, how do you do that? With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. And also, if you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have losing lineups on Fridays. So make it easy on yourself. And it's pretty simple. All you have to do is download that app today, the PrizePicks app, and you can use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And remember, with PrizePicks, you pick more or you pick less. It's that easy. Okay, so Maria, I know this is one of the tougher shows that we've had to do because you and I and Grant are accustomed to having such positive things to say about the Braves, and they always find a way. But these last 25 games, they've not really been able to find a way. 9-16 to be exact. For you, I wanted to start with, what's maybe that trend that kind of concerns you the most, but also we do try to stay encouraged and stay positive and optimistic on this show. So I'll ask on the flip side of that, the encouraging trend for you as well. But first things first, what's maybe that trend that you've seen across these last 25 games that really concerns you?
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from the hitting for a second just because I feel like there is a positive, and I'll tell you that in a minute, in the hitting, even though it is very negative, and we know that. I think the thing that concerns me the most is this fifth starter rotation spot cannot be figured out. And the reason why I say that is because the rest of the rotation has been able to keep them in games, give them opportunities, and they've done really well collectively as a whole. You can have an off night as a pitcher, it happens, but for the most part, every single outing that the rest of those guys have had is pretty good. And they are really what's keeping this team afloat right now. I said it earlier in the show. I've said it, I think, over and over and over. So that is one of the most concerning things. And that indicates to me that moves do have to happen before the trade deadline. And I think that Alex Anthopoulos will do that. I see no reason why he wouldn't. I have no idea what he's thinking in terms of fixing that spot, but it does have to be fixed. And it could be a simple fix as Ian Anderson coming back. We don't know yet, though. And so they do need to fix that, though, because this is the part of the team that, number one, has struggled the most in the postseason, although we did see the bats go quiet in Philadelphia, but pitching has been a real struggle for the Braves in the postseason the last couple of years. So if you're not going to have that fifth spot solidified, you're going to need to do it very quickly.
Yeah.
So on the positive side, one thing that I think is very encouraging about this slump for the Braves, and remember, since late April, no other team in baseball has fewer runs contributed than the Braves. That is an alarming stat. That is very frustrating for an offense who, you look at it on paper, these guys should be hitting much better than they are. Let's just say that. That's the nicer way to say that. But for me, they're hitting the ball really hard. And typically that indicates, it's not everything in baseball, but it indicates that they are going to capitalize at some point. And the ball's just not flying out of the yard. They're getting so close, and it's really frustrating. And I think we talked about this with Austin and Riley maybe about a month ago. You guys are hitting the ball really far and you're hitting it hard. What the heck is going wrong? And he also indicated it's incredibly frustrating. So maybe a little bit of adjustments in how hard they're hitting the ball. That sounds ridiculous, but because of the distance that it's carrying, maybe there's something correlated between the two. Those two things in baseball do mean a lot when you're at the plate. And so I think that the positive thing is there are things that are happening. Hitting the ball hard, it's going far. It's just not getting there. So I think that's encouraging that it's not like they're just standing up there and doing nothing. They are contributing. It's just not going in their favor right now. I do expect that to turn at some point. I'm just not sure when.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think for me, the concerning part is that fifth spot in the rotation. I think we all thought that maybe it would be, and granted, you look at AJ Smith-Shawver and you don't know that those things are going to happen just in terms of injury, for example. So, I mean, it happens, and that kind of also sets you back. And I think you make a great point before I kind of go into the fifth spot in the rotation, going back to the top four spots, like everyone is due at least one bad game, right? And like you said, I would call it more of an uncharacteristic inning for Max Fried than maybe an uncharacteristic outing. But in the general scheme of things, just not still the ideal outing for Max Fried. Charlie Morton, the same, has had a couple of those. And Chris Sale, has had one as well. So it's like, and Ronaldo Lopez. So if you put those four together, I mean, collectively speaking, if they've had a collection of like 5 or 6 uncharacteristic starts, well, that's to be expected at this point in the season. But here's the challenge. Unfortunately, because that fifth spot in the rotation is so undecided, you almost have to play a perfect game, for lack of a better term. You almost can't have any slip-ups because there's no one to kind of catch your back in that fifth spot in the rotation. And then your batting order, the bats aren't doing it for you. They're so silent. So I think that's what kind of concerns me as well. Like, wow, I hate for it there to be so much pressure on that pitching rotation 1 through 4 to have to be quote unquote perfect because we're still not getting it. And I know, like you said, you're bringing up Spencer Schwellenbach, and you're bringing him up much sooner than you ever would have wanted to. You're bringing up Hurston Waldrop much sooner than you ever would have wanted to, and you're sort of kind of piecemealing. So that's kind of concerning. Like, okay, it's time for Spencer Schwellenbach to get his start again, and he's going to have to get that start against the Orioles. Like, and this is a team that's actually going in the opposite direction. I believe they've won 19 or so. Or 16 of 19 of their games, and they're just, hitting it like out of the park. Everything is just the opposite. They're kind of functioning on all cylinders. So that, I think, is kind of what backdoor to the fifth rotation concerns me, as far as how much weight or pressure it's putting on the first four. And then I think, to your point, optimism is, like, as much as it was painful to watch Michael Harris II get a triple, but he still got a triple. I mean, he still made that contact, and he's still hitting the ball hard. It's just that, those tweaks we always hear about. And I'm going back to like Austin Riley's rookie season and some of the work that Ron Washington did with him in so many different ways, right? And I'm thinking like how it produced dividends. Or we are seeing, I think, Maria, and correct me if I'm wrong, but talking about earlier, even in this season, like Jarred Kelenic just tweaking his bat, his hit just a little bit. And maybe that's all it is. And I don't want to make it sound too minimal, but I'm going to make it sound minimal, because I still am agreeing with you. I don't want us to overreact. Maybe it's just everybody has to just take a step back and make sure that they're not pressing, and make sure that maybe there's a tweak here or there that they can do that maybe will bring them back to where they need to be in terms of what our expectations are of what these Braves do when they get to the plate. Now, speaking of Brian Snitker, said something last night for post game. He said the obvious: we're not scoring runs. We're not bunching anything together. Other than that, I don't know what else to say. Mm-hmm. So on the off day, we knew that he adjusted the lineup for Tuesday. Didn't work. But what else maybe can he do, whether it's tinkering with the lineup or anything else that you can think of? I mean, personally, I think it's just going to be a continued tinkering until they hit the money spot. But it's still amazing to me that we're having a conversation that the Braves have not had a 5-game losing streak in 6 years. And now we're kind of on the cusp of that. But I do think, Maria, I don't know if they're going to avoid the 5-game losing streak when they take on the Orioles tonight, but I do think we're all at a point where we're just like, Snit, we don't have anything to say.
Yeah, I mean, and let's not forget to this series that the Orioles and the Braves were the preseason pick for one of the preseason picks for the World Series.
Yep.
So this is a very good baseball team. And like you mentioned it, they're headed in the opposite direction of the Braves right now. And the Braves still aren't bad. I think that's one thing that we don't say enough. Because there's a lot that is bad for the Braves right now, but they're still over 500. They're still fine. They're still in a good position to turn things around. You start to get concerned about it. Now, I'm concerned now, but you start to get really concerned later on. And Snit's right. There's kind of not a lot to say. I mean, they're doing everything they can. They're messing with the lineup. They're trying to figure out the fifth starter rotation. They're doing everything they can. And yes, there is too much pressure. I like that you said that. There's too much pressure on the rest of the rotation to be perfect because the offense just isn't doing anything. And there's not really much to say. And I think that the only thing you can do is just continue to do a little thing here, a little thing there. And yes, Jarred Kelenic did completely change the way that he swung the bat. I mean, that was a complete haul over in spring training. So you're right about that. And it worked for a little bit. And now it's just, I don't know. I wish I had the answer. I wish everybody had the answer, but I think it's just going to be constantly doing little things to try to figure out what will work for this team. Maybe it's a massive trade. I don't know. It's very possible because in 2021, when they brought in Jock Peterson, he was really the secret weapon for their turnaround. And all it was, he was an energy guy, and he was and it's crazy because you don't really talk about that a lot in baseball. It doesn't really have the effect that you would think it would on other sports, but he came in and changed the trajectory of this clubhouse simply by being himself and being like, hey, wait a second, you guys are a good baseball team. Let's figure something out to make it work. Maybe they need a guy like that because there's certainly not one of them in the clubhouse right now. Who knows? It could be a plethora of different things. But all I know is that I don't want people to panic right now because I do feel like things are going to turn around for the Braves. It's just time is of the essence here as we start getting deeper into the summer, and you'd like to see it pay off soon.
Yeah, you really, really would. Now, we'll give you guys some tips and tools. We're going to end on a positive note because there's something cool rolling out at Truist Park. We'll talk about it when we go into the stretch. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are the formula for winning championships, and it also what keeps your ride or die alive. And listen, Marie and I are telling you guys, the Braves have the passion, they have the drive. We just might have to have the patience if we want to see this team return to its winning ways, just like eBay Motors, that has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. I've told you guys that I have definitely been pleased with some of the things I've ordered with eBay, including things for technically under the hood because it's been brake kits, but also for style purposes, I've ordered some really cool seat covers from eBay as well. They are quality. They are also affordable. So you might want to get in the game as well. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or die every time or your money back. So you're burning rubber and not cash with eBay. And it's easy to make your car an MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items apply. Exclusions apply, rather. Eligible items only. And eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, Maria, the Braves have announced that they will host Ludicrous Night at Truist Park on September 4th when they take on the Rockies. And he'll throw out, of course, the first pitch, the ceremonial first pitch, and they're going to give away 15,000 bobbleheads to the first 15,000 fans. So unless I get this wrong, if I remember correctly, I think from a previous show that we did, only one of us has a bobblehead. It's the other person on the screen and not me. So Maria, you got to give our fans tips and tools on how they can get that thing is so lit. Oh my God, I love it.
I love this thing. This is like my pride and joy. I love it.
It's so cool. Oh my God,
it's the best. Cool. It's so cool that it's on my desk, like front and center. Go ahead.
Right. And I was just about to say, when I saw this, I thought of you because we always have fun talking about your bobblehead for Outcast, but how cool is that? And you got to tell these guys though, how you were able to snag one.
Well, I'm going to go back to the ludicrous thing for a second, because when I saw them tweet it out, I think if you go to my Twitter, I tweeted it and I said, I have to have this. So it's going to be a point of contention for me to get to the ballpark. Yeah. I mean, my tip is to get there early, because when there's bobbleheads like that one and bobbleheads like the ludicrous one, people will line up for over an hour before they're allowed in the gate. And that's what you have to do to get these things. But to me, it's worth it. It's the coolest bobblehead I have. And I have a lot of bobbleheads because over the years I covered minor league baseball too. And they give out bobbleheads like it's candy. So I have a lot of bobbleheads, but that one is definitely my favorite. And so I would suggest getting to the ballpark very early. And to me, it's worth it. It's such a conversation piece. I don't know of a cooler bobblehead than this one. The Ludo one is really good though. So I
think that one's nice. Yeah, I think that one's nice too. Yeah, I don't have anything as funky like my best one, and I feel bad because this little bat fell out again. But I really like my little Andrew Jones one. I think
that one's really cool.
He's a cool one. So that's the best one I have so far. But yeah, I got to be on mission because I missed out on my Outcast one. So hopefully get this Luda one. But speaking of that, I think like you said, it's going to be a cool one. But who do you think should maybe be the next ATL artist to get a bobblehead night?
I think T.I. deserves it, right? And let's give him some redemption from what happened at Mercedes-Benz Stadium last season. Poor T.I. My gosh, I was so amped for that. For the celebration of hip hop, they had pretty much every hip hop rapper, everything that came through Atlanta for the last 50 years. And it was such an incredible lineup. And I think that their hands were full a little bit. There were a lot of moving parts to that day. So many wonderful artists, but T.I. was supposed to lead everybody off and he was supposed to walk through the tunnel. And it was so sick. You saw him on the halo board at the bends and, and he's doing this. I'm like, oh my gosh, you can't hear him. Couldn't hear a word. Not a word. Nothing came out. So let's give him some redemption. Give him a bobblehead. He would be great. He's such a staple in Atlanta. He loves this city. And I think T.I.
I think that would be a cool one. I definitely think that would be a cool one. And I'd say maybe Goody Mob might be like a nice
That would be
little,
good too.
yeah, either a Goody Mob or even a Jeezy, like, next
For sure.
pause. But yeah, you always kind of want to tip your hat to like the old school hip hop artists. And yeah, I think T.I. would definitely be the most appropriate one to be next in line. And if not T.I., maybe you give a nod to a Goody Mob, if you will. Yeah, I think all of those.
You
are
could
really
even
cool.
do Killer Mike.
Yeah, I was gonna say now Killer Mike might actually be a good one too. Because like in my mind, I'm starting to go through like that whole kind of organized noise, kind of old school, deaf, so deaf, kind of. And I'm thinking, who else have they not like honored, if you will, for lack of a better term, that might be. And I apologize because, okay, guys, I'm totally having a brain freeze, but the producer who, really was the one of the brainchilds and one of the geniuses behind Organized Noise too, unfortunately, passed away recently. Apologize, guys, I'm having a brain freeze on his name, but that would be a cool tribute as well. But the fact that we can have all of this conversation about the possibilities of who from the hip hop community in Atlanta could be on that next bobblehead just tells you how much influence the city has had on hip hop.
Yeah, and Killer Mike too. He's good because first of all, he's a Grammy-winning artist now.
Yes.
And Killer Mike is a staple in Atlanta because he's current. He's very up to date on all the Atlanta sports. If you ever run into Killer Mike, he would love to talk to you about the Hawks, the Falcons, the Braves.
And he can.
Oh, he definitely can. Well, I saw him. I'm trying to think. I saw him a couple months ago at a Hawks event, and I got to interview him, and he's so lovely. He's so nice, and he, he had a lot of opinions on the Falcons. So if you want to ask him about anything Atlanta sports, he's up to date. He can tell you anything you want to know. So I think Killer Mike would be a good one, and let's give him some kudos because now he's a Grammy Award-winning artist.
I know. Yeah, that would be that'd be so cool. I think people would be really, really excited about that. Just like we hope that you guys are excited about us and coming to visit us every single Wednesday at the Atlanta Baseball Party. Of course, we appreciate you stopping by and also streaming us because you can 24/7. And of course, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast. Come right back tomorrow. You'll see Maria and I for the Atlanta Sports Party.